Every educator has a story to tell. What story will you tell at storiesinEDU.com? Do you want your best story published? Well, here's an opportunity. The Stories in EDU book contest is looking for amazing people like you to write their true story for publication. Choose a category: overcoming obstacles, relationships, voice and choice, hooks, technology use, and that one kid. You don't want to miss this opportunity to tell your favorite story from inside your classroom or your building. More info at storiesinEDU.com. Let's share your best story. Submit today at storiesinEDU.com. We're waiting for your story.
Welcome to the Stories in EDU podcast, the show where we talk with real educators and hear their powerful impact. Their stories will grab you, inspire you, and show you the reach of the work we do. And now, the Bretzman Group presents your hosts, Josh Gauthier and Mandy Taylor.
Welcome back to the Stories in EDU podcast, your place to listen to great stories from educators all across the United States and the world as they share some different things they've experienced throughout their careers. And speaking of things that I've experienced, today was the experience of going back to school after spring break. Now, Mandy, you had your spring break quite a while ago.
We've been back for a while.
What was that?
I said, yes, we've been back for 2 weeks, maybe?
Like 2 or 3 weeks. So do you feel it took you a while to get back in the groove, or like you were hitting the ground running right away, you were rejuvenated and ready to go?
Well, to be really honest, since I'm not in the classroom anymore, since I'm a coach, I feel like there are certain times when, like that first day back, I try to kind of pull back from classrooms because I know teachers are re-gearing up with their kids. There are certain times that I try to focus my office days, if you will, or computer days or, things like that on certain days like that, because they don't want those distractions. Like at the beginning, I used to be, try to be in and do all this stuff. And now I've kind of tried to understand the ebb and flow of just a teacher's day, week, how all of that plays out. So I always find right before a holiday or the week back, they're trying to kind of get in with their people and there are distractions from everyone. And so I kind of try to minimize that. So as far as me personally, I can ease in a little bit more than teachers because I don't have 25 faces waiting for me when I walk in the door.
Indeed, it's such a difference. I think that's one thing that I've realized too is that being in that supporting role is different completely. Mm-hmm. One thing I was really surprised in today is how awake I was. Not sure what to attribute that to. Did have my chocolate frosted mini wheats this morning.
Right.
Maybe that's the key. Don't know. But what I do know is if you've been listening to the show for a while, we always end with a lightning round, but we're going to shake things up, being that we're, well into our time here, over 20 episodes in, which is super exciting. So we are going to actually begin with our game of stories, which is brought to you by the Bretzman Group. And we're going to do that right away with our lightning round. But before we do that, we want to bring on this week's guest. Barbara, is it Gruener?
Gruener, yes, sir.
Awesome. And Barbara, can you tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, I'm a school counselor and a character coach. I'm also author of the book, What's Under Your Cape? Superheroes of the Character Kind. I've been in education 34 years. I'm a graduate of actually UW-Madison. So there's a connection.
Badgers.
Yeah, go Badgers. And I live in Friendswood, Texas now with my husband and our family.
And you mentioned
34 years.
Yeah, it's a long time.
Yes.
Wow.
And you mentioned while we were getting ready to record, you got a little connection up to my neck of the woods up near Green Bay.
Yes, I grew up on a dairy farm just south of Green Bay, and it's been in our family 155 years. My brother and my uncle and then his son all run it still. They farm about 2,500 acres and they milk about 2,000 cows 3 times a day. So it's a big mega farm.
That's mind-blowing. I can't even wrap my head around that. So we're going to focus on education because that's what I know. I don't know cows. I'm just thankful that they give us so much great stuff. Uh, no good segue from that, but we're going to go into our lightning round now. So if you've been listening, like I mentioned, we always do the little 1-minute stories to answer a quick little prompt, and then we're going to roll right on into the show from there. So this week's prompt that I think fits very nicely with where we're going to go with Barbara later is hook it. So tell a story about a hook you use to capture student attention and then deliver content at the peak of their interest. Did you get the idea from Dave Burgess and his book, Teach Like a Pirate, or someplace else? And what was the result? Do you have something in mind?
I do, and I'm going to talk about a little bit with puppets. I did not get the idea from Dave, although Dave's reminder was a good one. I have used puppets for probably 20 years. Basically what I'll do is when the children come to see me, I'm a school counselor, I got them once a month. When they come to see me, then I've got a puppet on my hand ready at the door, shaking theirs as they come in, and that puppet has a problem. And the kids cannot wait to say what the problem is, to see what the problem is, and to figure out how they can problem solve for that puppet and make things better. And it's always a segue into my lesson. So if the puppet has been stealing, it's probably a lesson on trustworthy and so on. So we're working on core values, unleashing the power of the puppet.
Oh, and you have time spare, which Mandy is going to be oh so thankful for.
I want
Go,
this
Mandy.
No, I'm just kidding.
Mandy, I'll give you a 5-second head start. I love that, and I do want to just mention, and as Barbara and I talked about a little bit before we were getting started here, that we had Sam Patterson on the podcast quite a few episodes back, and he also does a lot with puppets. And I'm excited because tonight I was able to sort of connect those two. Barbara hadn't been connected with Sam.
Oh, awesome.
I hope those two have a lot of great conversations about puppetry because he does a lot of great stuff with puppets, and I'm sure you could learn a lot from Barbara. And I'm excited to see where that relationship goes. And if you do puppets, feel free to reach out to Barbara. We'll get her contact info later. All right, Mandy.
Okay. Yeah.
Go for it.
That's a tentative yes from me. The majority of my classroom experience is primary. So I spent 12 years in first grade and 5 or 6 years in third grade. And so really just coming to school today coming to school every day is the hook because the kids are always excited to be there. So the biggest hook that I used all the time is literature. No matter, like if we were starting a new science lesson, we would start with a story. If we were if we were doing something in math, we would read The Doorbell Rang and we would talk about what happens each time the doorbell rang and we had to divide the cookies a different way. It seems like no matter the content, no matter I kind of feel like it was a gift of mine to be able to match the particular content to a book that was going to draw the kids' interest in and then apply the new learning to whatever we had just read.
Beautiful.
Yay!
Like it. All right, I'm up. Let's see where I'm going to go. One of my favorite ways to hook students that's so dead simple that anybody could do it tomorrow, and I think almost every teacher does this. And it's one of the most simple things. It's quick to do, but I guarantee you'll get your kids talking the moment they walk in the door. Just changing your seats around. I taught in a lab a lot, so that wasn't always an option. But even if that was the case, I tried to. So one particular situation that happened when I had this fourth grade it wasn't intervention group, it's called Win Time. So really my group was an enrichment group. So I was a related arts teacher. And so I saw them every day for about 30 minutes. And there was a section of time where we would do read aloud. And it wasn't every day, but the days we did read aloud, I set all the chairs up in a little like amphitheater set up inside this computer lab. And that's when they would know that we would be reading.
Excellent.
All right. Boom. Lightning round over. Now it's time for the thunder round. That comes after lightning, right?
Lightning and the thunder. Thunder. Yes.
Don't flag us, YouTube, please. It's a cover. It's a cover song. We're covered under fair use. So Barbara, Thank you for being on, of course, and taking some time out of your life to be a part of this podcast. And we hope that you have as much fun as we have talking to you. So let's just dive right into it. I mean, I am just intrigued by the puppet thing. And I really want to know the genesis of this because I love the idea behind it and I hear people talk about it. And, it just seems so far removed from my experience as a middle school teacher. So I want to know for you, where did puppets first enter into your educational arsenal?
Okay, well, I started as a secondary educator. I taught Spanish for 10 years. And then I decided to go to the lower grades. And when I got to my pre-K through third, there was a puppet there waiting for me, like the year 2000. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no, I'm not doing anything with that thing. He's adorable, but I mean, like staring at me, right? And so I was like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm supposed to use this thing. So I put it on my hand the first day of class because I was pretty lost in a pre-K through third grade, having had my education in secondary. Now, I taught Spanish 1, so I knew like the songs and all that stuff. We would be playing with the kids just like I did with high school friends trying to learn a new language. But from the moment they walked in that door, oh, who do you have and who is your friend? I'm like, his name is Seymour, baby seal. And they instantly fell in love with Seymour and like, thank goodness his mouth doesn't move because I cannot make this little guy talk. But I could make him rub his paw. And so then they would say, oh, it looks like he's shy. And I'd say, oh, yes, he's very shy. And like overnight, yeah, he would have like these 2 little paws and just kind of my finger and thumb with this thing on my hand. I'm very well aware that it is a piece of cloth on my hand. And I'm not really even thinking it's real. But these kids are. And so they'll be like, so how is Seymour doing today? Or they would write notes to Seymour and say, tell Seymour I love him. And I'm like, okay, I have died and gone somewhere really strange because these kids are connected to this baby heart seal on my hand. I didn't really know how deeply connected until the first fire drill. I'm not making this up. The fire drill, I'm like, all I can care about is getting out the right door, right? Because it was a brand new school. I get out there and yeah, guess who they're looking for? Right.
Oh, no.
No. Where's Seymour? They all want to know where's Seymour. And I'm like, well, he's burning up in the building. Like, don't say that, but you're thinking that because you're like, that's because I never even thought to grab him. And as the puppet patrol grew, I'm like, there's no way I can grab all these babies. But I probably have about 25 puppets now because kids will bring them to me or I'll see one at Barnes & Noble. I'm like, a sloth? I need a sloth. So my newest puppet is a sloth, but they are hilarious. The puppets are such a fun way to hook kids. And it's like truth serum. They will tell you what's going on when you have a puppet on your hand, a kid who won't even give you the time of day until you have a puppet on your hand. And I'm serious, like truth serum.
It's funny because I have an early childhood background and so have worked with little ones for most of my time. Like even before I was a teacher, I worked in daycares and things like that. And we always, even when I taught first grade, we had a puppet station. We had a puppet station that the kids would, for retelling and things like that. And they always really got into that process and would create these stories. And in our library, our librarian has like a hollowed out old wooden TV. And that's a puppet stage that she has in our library. And even when I taught third grade, I had a Mo Willems station where we had the Elephant and Piggy books and the kids had the Elephant and Piggy finger puppets and they would tell the stories back and forth. And these are third graders, 9-year-olds. And without any hesitation, would put those things on and it helped with their fluency. It helped with their retelling of the stories and things like that. So I've seen it kind of from the perspective of the kiddos using them. I never really did it my own self, kind of as the leader of that. So I'm wondering, like, you said you started with this one because it was just in the room. Do you talk with them, or are they all just kind of like mascot? Like when I think of like the Disney characters at Disney World, they don't speak. They kind of, like all of the the ones that are in costume kind of, what do you do? Do you have voices for them?
Right.
Where do their stories come from?
So over the years, they've really morphed, because I started with Seymour and his mouth didn't move. So he was basically mute, and I liked that really well. Then he got a little friend named Lucille, and she was a little gray harp seal. And so then they were always still mute, and that was so great, because I would just say, oh, they're saying this, or oh, they must be thinking this. Or he'd let the kids say what they're thinking and saying. Mm-hmm. But then I got this big giraffe that takes up like my whole arm. I got him at a garage sale. His name is Junior. And he's sassy. So like he started out so disrespectful. And these kids would be like, oh, Junior, that is not how we act at Westwood. And I suddenly realized that if I give them a really, snarky or sassy personality, I'm going to let the kids teach the puppets how to act. And it was such a great way. So they'll say, oh, Junior, that's the giraffe that's disrespectful. But Mommy, I taught that giraffe how to use his manners. And then there's so much ownership and, efficacy and empowerment with the kids, even though I'm holding the giraffe to actually, solve its problems. In third, fourth, and fifth, I have made a puppet station so they can actually work the puppets, because they're dying to have those puppets on their hands. And they use the voices pretty close to the voice I've given the puppet. So that really helps them kind of like, they think it's a hoot. Like, it's so much fun. Like the sloth talks really slowly. And so they have to and they're like moving that sloth. So, I mean, oh my gosh. And yeah, just like in that movie Zootopia, I mean, hilarious. Now, they, like third grade, 2 years ago, I have the pack rat stealing my stuff because I'm trying to set up a trustworthiness lesson. And he's been stealing my character rocks. After that, some kids went out to the playground, and I come back from lunch, and there is a note with about 30 rocks, like pieces of cement and like things they found on the playground. And it says, to Pack and Mrs. Gruener, love Haley and Emily. Now you won't have to steal anymore. And these children have gone to the playground to pick up rocks so that Pack doesn't get in trouble with me anymore. I'm telling you, they think they're real.
This is incredible. As I'm listening to you, all I can think of is a reflection of myself. I'm very passive aggressive. So like I try to avoid confrontation, and I probably am not going to call somebody out when they're doing something. And it almost seems like the puppet sort of like takes that down. Like for kids who may not be willing to speak up for a situation because it's wrong, but because it's another person, they don't want to hurt their feelings. But because it's a puppet, it almost lets their guard down a little bit, and they feel like they can be more honest with it. I mean, is that what's happening here?
They are totally going to tell those puppets the way it goes. We decided to try to use it in discipline once too, because we had a boy who was just out of control, third grade again. And we said, buddy, instead of sitting here and copying the character pledge 55 times, let's write the next puppet the script. And so he chose the pirate puppet, but he had the pirate puppet looking for the next friend ship to come along. And I could not believe that was so clever that I had never thought of that. I'm like, friendship, leadership, citizenship. I never put the word ship with that pirate, with that idea. And that kid wrote one of my best puppet scripts ever.
Well, and as you talk, I can already see a lot of implications cross-curricular. I know you're a counselor, and so I can see the way that could be for sure. I office with our counselor and am in the room occasionally when she does guidance lessons. It's really fun. There's some scheduling challenges, and so like anytime she has a kid that she needs to work with, I leave, and when we're constantly back and forth grabbing laptops and running out the door so the other person can have the room. But it's given me some insight into, because when I was a classroom teacher, I always, when my kids had guidance, I didn't stay with them. They went to guidance and then I had that time. And so I'm thinking though about like things in math, like having, the math puppet that helps introduce the new manipulative. I'm thinking of how, like you said, with writing, it was like a discipline thing, but on the other hand, it can enhance writing skills. It can enhance communication. It can, like we used with literacy stations, it can help with fluency and phrasing and, working on taking turns and things like that. So the curricular ramifications, I think, of something like this tool are really, really big for something that is not just mainstream. I don't think every teacher has puppets. A lot of elementary teachers have a puppet somewhere in their room just because the teacher before left it. But, right. It's gotten my wheels turning about all kinds of different things that I could do even in my role.
Yeah. When we did the last puppets, it was at the puppet station. They were supposed to plan the next service learning event. And so the puppets, each took a hand, and the kids started talking and made the puppets like, I think we could donate blah, 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 or I think we could donate. And so I came over there and I said, what is Boris thinking? He's a bear. And this kid goes, I think we, and he's using my voice, and it was hilarious. I think we should make kits for the homeless. And so I said, oh, Boris, what are you going to put in those kits? And Boris goes, I think the little kids would like worksheets. And I'm like, oh, we're doing way too many worksheets if you think you're going to put some worksheets in a kit for some homeless kids. But it's so great to hear what they're thinking and to empower them, in so many ways, because they're talking through these puppets and you're learning so much about them from what they make the puppets say.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and even...
Oh, go ahead, Mandy.
Well, I was just going to say, even from the aspect, I don't know a lot of research on it, but I know about play therapy, that a lot of times kids will, in play situations, be able to kind of work through certain things. And so as a counselor in your particular position, I can see where that would be something that would happen, that you're getting in their head without it having to be, tell me how you feel and tell me, that contrived, thing that sometimes might not seem as authentic, where even though this is through a toy, they're speaking what they're actually thinking, so.
From their heart, really. After Hurricane Harvey,
right.
We were out for, 10 days because of Hurricane Harvey.
Wow.
3,000 of our homes flooded and 65 of my children were displaced. And some of them still are, if you can believe it, 8 months later. And so the puppet, of course, was just scared. And it's just a bird that squawks. She has a little squawker on the inside. His name is Winthrop. And so he's just squawking. So I'd say, I can tell Winthrop's really upset. Something must have scared him. Who can tell me what might have scared Winthrop? And hands down, it was the best opener for talking about their fear, because whether they were flooded or not, everybody went through 55 inches of rain in 5 days. And Winthrop, then they wanted to know if I actually took Winthrop home or if he had to weather the storm in school.
Oh, man.
I know, right?
So just really briefly here before we wrap up, this all ties in. You may have mentioned at the beginning, I don't know if we mentioned it before we started recording, but you are the author of a book called What's Under Your Cape. Do you want to talk a little bit about where that comes from?
So it's going to be stories and strategies to help our kids use their superpowers for good. So I use the acrostic superheroes to talk about service for S and unconditional love for U and perseverance for P, and kind of go through some different programs that we've put in place. In '09, our school was awarded the School of Character, the National School of Character distinction. So a lot of it is all the things that we did in order to kind of like get that distinction, but also plant our character seeds so that as they go out into the world, they're not only valued, but they're also valuable. And so it's just a guide for caregivers to help plant character seeds, I guess.
That is awesome. So you have a book, you have these great lessons you are doing with puppets. Where might our listeners reach out to you or find out more about these great things?
Okay, so I've been blogging since 2011, and so I think last I had 1,460 posts. So if anybody ever wants an idea on anything character related, they can go to the www.corneroncharacter.com and just have fun reading. I love reviewing books. I have a whole bibliography, all the different books that teach values. I love to throw down lessons, throw up pictures. We just did a peace garden with our kindness rocks a month ago. You know, if we've done it, I've blogged about it. So I would love to invite readers into our community to learn more about what we do.
All right, and then that, just to reiterate, was corneroncharacter.com?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to checking that out for sure. And you are also on Twitter as well. Where might people tweet with you?
At Barbara Gruener.
I'm excited to talk to give our counselor these resources and kind of connect you with her. This is her second year as a counselor. She's doing a fantastic job. Oh, third year. This is her third year. And she's doing a fantastic job with our kiddos, but it's always, on my Twitter, like in my PLN, I feel like counselors is an area that I don't have as many of because that's not who I typically connect with, but I'm excited to kind of that connection for her and give her your blog info so she can start looking at some things. And I want to buy her a puppet. Let's be real.
Oh, there are so many good ones out there. There's a hen called Henrietta that's just precious because one hand can go in to move her beak and the other one actually goes to be her wings. And she's really amazing. I think you can get her at Marco along with the Band-Aid chicken book. So she's adorable.
Awesome.
That sounds awesome. Well, Barbara, we are going to bid you adieu and do some wrap up, but thank you for coming along, and hopefully sometime in the future we can have you back to hear some new puppet stories.
Thank you so much for having me.
Sure. You have a good night.
Thanks,
Barbara.
Bye, Mandy.
All right. Wow. I have to say, Mandy, that was one of the coolest episodes I think we've recorded yet.
The thing that's fascinating to me is how everybody has this little thing that makes them who they are and what they do. Like her story,
quite literally, she has little things. But then she's like, yeah, I've blogged since 2011. I'm like, I'm sorry, Barbara. Like, where'd you come from? That she's been blogging this process and this journey for 7 years or whatever. I'm so fascinated to look back at what she has and how that would help not just counselors, but anybody that is working with, it sounds even like elementary is ideal, but even in middle school and high school, the idea of writing for the puppet for other kids, like if I'm thinking of things like Flipgrid or your mystery Skype class that you do, or a Google Hangout with, a 6th or 7th grade class with the 4th grade class or something like that, where they do things, just the possibilities seem really, really wide open that you could absolutely use. It makes me think of all of these situations where we want students to pretend they're somebody else, pretend you're in the 1800s, pretend you're, George Washington, pretend you're, and students really struggle with that. I think John Crippo talks a lot about how that's really challenging for kids. But based on this conversation tonight, it seems like if you could somehow work that puppet angle, some power in the puppet thing. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if there's research on puppetry out there. But
well, that's what I was thinking. I remember when Sam was on, we were talking about puppets, and like he had one that he kept doing in the screen. And I'm wondering if, I know you said before that you've kind of made that connection for Barbara and Sam, but it would be fascinating to see, because there has to be research on it, or, at least books on how to, like procedural and how you would make them. I don't know. I'm so fascinated.
Yeah, I really just appreciate the wealth and breadth of creativity within this profession. I think if anything is a hallmark of what this podcast is about, it's that, wow, are there some incredible individuals with some incredible talents who are in our education profession. And I think it really helps us tell our narrative that we do have some of our best and brightest who are choosing teaching and not choosing other things. And thank God that somebody like Barbara is there for those kids. And to think about Hurricane Harvey and how powerful that was. And we had a conversation with Sandra a few weeks ago about how the things they did to help kids with that, and how those two stories kind of ships in the night, but yet in both those communities, those kids needed that so badly. And thank God they were there to be there for those kids. And that I have to believe that that's in every school. And we just need to record more stories because there's lots out there.
Well, and I think that's also one of the things that we need to continue to do is reach out to different teachers about sharing their stories. And certainly if you are a listener of the podcast, we want you to reach out to us. Something, Barbara may not have thought, hey, puppetry, that's really something I need to talk about. But when we approached her, she was able to say, okay, and kind of talk about it. So really just be thinking, like, what's your story? What is either something that's happened with your kids, something that's happened with you, just on this journey, and reach out to Josh or I so that we can get you scheduled to visit with you. I am tired of public educators not being highlighted. And I think that is the power of something as simple as this little podcast where we just get to visit and really highlight the work that teachers are doing all across the country.
And if you are listening and your skill is not so much in wanting to talk, but you can write about it, we're in the middle of our Stories in EDU book contest right now. I'm not sure when this episode's going live, but I imagine regardless of when this episode comes out, you will probably still be able to submit a story to the Stories in EDU book contest, where we are compiling stories from educators across the country and the world, many of who we've had on this podcast, but certainly doesn't have to be limited to that. And that's just a chance for you to write a 1,000 to 4,000 word story on a few different themes. You choose a theme that you want to write about. You write a story, submit it to us. We'll do the hard work. We'll edit it, and if it's a good story, which everyone we've had so far has been great, then we would love to include it in this book that the Bretzman Group is putting together. So that's at storiesinEDU.com. You can find out more about that. It's also where you can find the rest of our episodes and a whole lot more information. But on behalf of Mandy and myself, thank you for listening to another episode of Stories in EDU. We hope you join us every Tuesday as we release new episodes. And this is a lot of fun, and we'd love for you to join us sometime. So if you've got some stories to share, either head out to that website, write one for the contest, or reach out to myself at Mr. G Fact of the Day, or Mandy at Mandy M. Taylor, and we'll get you on the podcast and have a great conversation while we tell some really fun stories. Have a great time wherever you're at, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Stories in EDU podcast. Please be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, thanks again.